G'day and welcome back to Disc Golf Down Under. It's Matt here and welcome to part 4 of my beginner's guide to disc golf. And today we're going to look at an alternative to the backhand throw, which we looked at in part 2. Check that out above in the card. And we're going to be looking at the forehand or the sidearm throw. So on with the show. If you missed part 3 of our beginner's guide on putting, you can check that out above in the card above. And if you're enjoying the content on this channel, please consider subscribing. Also, I have heaps of ideas for future beginner guide videos. If you would like to see anything specific, let me know in the comments down below what you would like to see. Would you like to see something on rules, etiquette, playing in tournaments, different styles of throwing? So please comment down below, let me know what you'd like to see in the future. So first up, a quick disclaimer. I'm not a big forehand thrower. If you've ever watched Jomez or any other coverage on YouTube and you've seen James Conrad, I throw the forehand about as often as James does. So really for me, it's a get out of jail throw only. When I first started playing disc golf many years ago, I really loved the forehand, used to be very good at it, used to love the forehand. But as my backhand developed, I moved away from the forehand, and these days I find the backhand is much more consistent for me. Also, I find the forehand is quite tough on the muscles and the body, and the backhand is a much easier throw on the body, doesn't cause as much damage. So even though I'm not a big thrower of the forehand, I do understand the fundamentals of how to throw it. So let's jump in. The first question you might ask is, well, why do we need to throw the forehand? And as a beginner, once you start throwing your discs backhand, you'll notice that most discs will want to finish to the left. That's just the way that disc golf discs are designed. So if you want to turn around an obstacle and go towards the left as a right-handed player, we can throw our disc and expect it to finish to the left. And if you want it to go a little bit more left, we can put a bit more angle on the disc. We can do what's called hyzer, and it will finish further to the left. But what about if we want to go to the right? Well, there is the Anheuser shot that you will learn further on as your skills progress. And that's where we angle it the opposite and we try and pull it over and angle it to the right. But again, the disc still wants to go to the left. So it's quite a tricky shot, the Anheuser. And that's where the forehand comes in. So what we're doing is we're switching sides. So instead of spinning it out of our left side, we're turning around, and the disc is going to spin in the opposite direction from your right hand side. And that means the disc now is going to want to finish to the right. So this is very useful for shaping around an obstacle to the right hand side. The other reason that the forehand can be popular is that it is a more front on shot. So whereas the backhand, we turn side on to the target. So if the target is straight here, we have to turn side on. And as during our throw, we're turning away from the target. We're taking our eyes off the target. Whereas the forehand, we keep our body more square on, we can watch the target, keep our eyes locked on, and throw the disc straight at it. So a lot of people like that, particularly when you've got a gap and you need to get the disc through a very narrow gap. So the forehand throw just becomes another tool in your toolbox. And it's up to you. Some players don't like it and won't throw with it very much, like James Conrad, while other players are more predominantly forehand throwers like Nate Sexton and Jeremy Colling. And then other players like Paul Macbeth they're very strong in both directions. So if you want to be a really well-rounded, good disc golfer, then it's good to practice both. And who knows, maybe you'll prefer the forehand over the backhand. I know when I started out, I did prefer the forehand, but things change over time. As we have done in the previous videos, these instructions are for a right-handed player. And if you're a lefty, just switch everything around. In part 2 of our beginner's guide, when we talked about the backhand, we talked about the mechanics of how throwing the backhand is a bit like starting a lawnmower. So it's that quick pull, like starting a lawnmower. The forehand, if you live in the United States, a lot of people might say it's a bit like a baseball pitch. But here down under, there's not a lot of baseballers, so what can we compare it with? Well, what we can do is most people have used a hammer. And the action of throwing a forehand is very much like hitting a nail with a hammer. So think about a wall in front of you, and you've got your hammer, and you're going to hit the nail into the wall. But you're not going to stop when you hit the nail. You're going to follow through. So you want to swing that hammer to hit the nail on the wall that's just in front of you. So that is sort of the nearest thing that you could compare a forehand throw to. The difference between the backhand and the forehand is the wrist. In the backhand, the wrist is very passive. It sort of sits on the outside of the disc and it comes through, and the wrist really doesn't do much. It just opens up. Whereas with the forehand, the wrist is everything. It's really a very wristy action. It's a very active wrist. So it's all in the wrist. And while the wrist is very important, the entire body and the motion of the entire body is critical to a good forehand throw. So just like we did with the backhand, let's start with the feet up and go from there. Okay, so just like we did with the backhand, we're going to start with a standstill throw, and then we'll talk about a step later on. So here we go. We've got our setup here. We've got our marker disc on the ground, or it could be just part of the tee. And I've got my imaginary line back again. So this is the line of play. So this is aimed at where we want to throw. So again, this is where we want the disc to travel. It's not where we want it to end up. So if your discs are this now traveling, say 10 meters to the right, we need to aim our line 10 meters to the left. So first of all, setting up our feet. So we're going to start with our left foot as a right-handed player behind our marker disc and pretty much on the line of play. And it can be, some people like to have it more straight on, but really you probably want it about 30 to 45 degrees to the line that you're throwing. So in my case, I have it pointing out at 45 degrees to the right-hand side. Then your back foot is going to be a little bit behind and probably tilted out more towards a right angle. So a nice comfortable stance, maybe a little bit more than shoulder width apart. And that is our stance, our setup. You can modify it a bit to get comfortable and what feels right for you, but that's what you want. You want the feet to sort of be aligned so that it helps with the hip rotation. If you start rotating your feet too far apart, it locks your hips in and stops your hips from moving. So we want to keep our feet close to parallel, maybe a little bit of angle. So that's the first thing. And then we want to do is then practice our weight transfer again, just like we did with the backhand. So we're going to go back onto our back foot, all the weight onto the back, and we're going to drive forward onto the front foot. So again, we're going to go from all the weight on the back, all the weight on the front, and the back foot may even come off the ground as you're throwing. Biggest mistake we see with the forehand, with the weight transfer, is just like the backhand, people throwing off the back foot. So they lean back and they just throw it, and again, just like the backhand, the disc goes nose up, doesn't get a lot of distance, and it stalls out and finishes to the right. So we need to get that transfer onto the front foot, onto the left leg. Okay, and next are the hips. And again, just like the backhand, the hips are very, very important. So we've set up our feet, and our hips, what we want to do is rotate them just like we did with the backhand. So in the backhand, we rotated back and then we rotated forward as we came through. With the forehand, as we go back onto the back foot, we want to rotate our body so that our shoulders are aligned with the target line. So we want to twist about 45 degrees to the right, and we'll have our reach back up as part of that. And then as we start coming forward, we're going to rotate the hips, and that will help move the upper body. And as we said before, it's like a spring. So we're going to come forward, rotate the hips, and as you come right onto the front foot, your hips should be facing straight forward at the target. So like that. And we're going to drive with the hips. So just like we said with the backhand, relax those hips, get them moving, rotating, pivoting. So you got to go back and forward and rotate. Moving up now to the grip. So as a right-handed player, right hand out, disc on top. And what we want to do is we want to start at the disc into the flesh there between the thumb and the index finger. So that is your starting point. And then what we're going to do is we want to take our bottom two fingers, and they're going to act as a rest. They're going to sit on the edge of the disc out there. And then your thumb is going to sit on the outside rim like that. And then we've got our 2 fingers in here, and this is where there's some variations. So this is for the power grip. So some people like to put the middle finger up against the rim and then push the index finger up against it. That's what we call a stacked grip. Other people like to then also possibly look at bringing the index finger down, curl it up against the rim, and the middle finger pushing out against the rim. So they're the 2 main types of power grip, but you can look at different variations. Some people like to have the index finger under the middle, flip it around, and there's also a fan grip. So if you want a bit more control, we can lay our fingers out like that, or again together, and that is our grip. So let's go back to the grip that I prefer, which is the stacked grip. So middle finger up against the rim, index finger pushing on top, and what you're doing is you're pushing in against the corner of the rim of the disc. So then flip it over, hold it up, so we can see our 2 fingers out here. They're holding the rim. It's tucked in nice and tight against the base of the hand here. We want that, and that is our grip. So that's the forehand grip. Okay, so now we're going to look at the arms and the upper body and putting it all together. So we're going to set up behind our disc here, set up our stance, set up our grip, and we're going to talk about the arms. So let's start with the reach back. So just like there's a reach back with the backhand, there's a reach back with the forehand. And we're not going to be doing a huge reach back. It's not like with the backhand. It's just taking the disc back, and you want to keep that elbow sort of in close to your body. Some people like to keep the forearm level as they reach back, whereas you might see some pros, they'll reach up, they'll bend the arm and bring the disc up almost vertical. It's what feels comfortable with you. The real important thing is what the disc is doing at the release point. So as we reach back, all our weight is on our back foot, and then we want to start driving forward and coming through. And as that starts happening, so we're moving our weight onto our front foot, rotating our hips, we want to start pulling with the elbow. So we're pulling with the elbow, the disc is dragging behind. And we also want to cock the wrist at the back of the backswing as well. So we're pushing it right back. So as we come through, we get that maximum snap with the disc. So driving through with the elbow, and then we come through, and as the elbow comes in line, we start rotating with the elbow. And then as we get through and the disc is sort of in the front, over the front of your foot, is when the wrist starts to rotate. Like that. So I'll demonstrate the throw now. Oh, and one last thing. What you want to do with your palm, as you're bringing your palm through, you want to keep your palm flat. The biggest mistake we see is people that roll the wrists. And that is because when you're throwing a ball, most people bring the wrist down. And that habit comes through with disc golf as well. So as you throw through, the wrist rolls over. What you want to do is keep that palm facing up. And you'll see my palm's up, and basically the fingers are still in the same position they were on the disc. So here's an example video of what happens when you release the disc, nice with the palm up, nice flat release, and you can see the disc comes out nice and clean. And here's an example of what happens when you roll the wrist. You can see the disc comes out, it wobbles out, and that wobble through the air is taking energy out of the disc, and that means less distance. So what you want to do is concentrate on keeping that palm flat, getting that nice, clean, flat release, and no wobble out of your discs. A good drill to practice is like the hammer drill, like we're trying to hit something with a hammer. So get your setup with your disc, and what you want to do is practice hitting nails with your hammer, with your disc. So you want to get that flick and practice that. And then once you've got that feeling good, you want to bring it up to a horizontal type maneuver. And to put it like we did with the backhand, we did the chest throw, where we were just throwing off the chest. You can do the same thing with the hammer drill. We can pull the elbow in close to the body, And what we can do is just practice that hitting the hammer like that, and just having it flick and getting used to the very wristy action. So one more time with that drill. So what we're going to do is just keep the elbow in, it's sort of locked against the body, and we just want to rotate that and use the wrist. Okay, what about the head? Well, the good news about the forehand is that the head can, again, keep it nice and still, and you can keep your eyes locked on the target throughout the entire throw. We don't need to look at our disc. We can keep eyes focused, and as we come through the motion, we can go all the way through the swing while keeping your eyes on the prize. And that's why a lot of people like the forehand, particularly if you've got to throw through a very narrow gap. It can give you a lot more confidence than when you have to throw a backhand and you have to turn your eyes off the target and away. Okay, and moving on now to adding in a step. So just like we did with the backhand we started off with a standstill throw, and then we moved into a step. We can do the same thing with the forehand. So what we can do is we can set up, move back, and what we're going to do is take a step forward and plant our left foot behind the disc or the marker and throw with a step. So this gets you moving forward, gets a bit more momentum, and helps you move your weight from your back to your front. So just to demonstrate how that step works. And so just once more with the step. So I'm just going to come in one step away from the disc. I'll move a bit sideways so you can see the action. So we set up. We're going to do everything like we normally do, and what we're going to do is try and time our reach back just like the backhand, so that our reach back is just as our foot hits the ground, and then we're going to pull through, and everything's going to start as the weight moves forward. So that brings us towards the end of our video, and just like I said in my backhand video, if you want to become good at the forehand, you need to practice, practice, practice. So get down to the park, take your discs down. It's good to practice when you're first starting out with your mid-ranges, so things like your Mako 3, your Buzz, your Axis, those types of discs. You don't want to go for the super overstable discs to begin with. You want to keep a nice neutral stability disc, good beginner discs, to learn the form. And we want to learn to bring our hand through nice and level. We want to practice keeping the nose down, just like in the backhand. We have to keep that nose down. If you bring it through and you throw it nose up, the disc is going to lose its power, stall out, turn to the right. So we've got to practice keeping it flat, get that nice powerful whipping release like you're hitting a hammer. So practice that. And one final very important thing with the forehand is don't forget to warm up. It's actually quite tough on the body, the forehand. A lot of injuries, you can almost get like a tennis elbow injury, disc golfer's elbow, I guess, from the forehand. It does take its toll, and that's one of the reasons why I don't like to throw it as often as well, is it is tough on my body. If I go out and I practice the forehand, I do feel it the next day. But if you are going to do it, start easy, build up, and develop that muscle memory, just like we did for the backhand. Okay, so I hope you got a bit out of this video. I'm no expert on the forehand, but hopefully you've learnt the basics and you can go out and pick it up, maybe throw it better than I can. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. And as I said before, if you're liking the content on the channel, please subscribe. If you've got any ideas for future beginner guides, please drop them in the comments down below as well. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Good luck on the golf course, and we'll catch you in the next one.